Howdy, y'all. Welcome to True Lying Film Discussion. Because films lie to tell the truth, or some truth, or a truth. Ain't that something?
So, I'm going to spitball a few ideas here, because I've recently been rewatching the Dirty Harry series, starring one of America's favorite cowboys, Clint Eastwood. Now, as everybody should know, Dirty Harry is not a Western, although there are many moments in the films that play out like a Western. Instead, it is a series of 5 gritty urban crime thrillers in which we follow Inspector Harry Callahan. I'm going to stick with analyzing the first 2 films, Dirty Harry from 1971 and Magnum Force from 1973, because I think they are the most definitive in the series, and I believe they become a unified whole that answers my question most effectively. Over the years, people have asked, isn't the film reactionary? Isn't the film too conservative? Isn't the film fascist? When the film was first released, both Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert actually called it fascist. But I'm interested here in another question. Is the character actually good at his job? Now, your answer to that might depend on your answer to those other questions. If you think Harry is too authoritarian, then you will probably feel he is a bad cop. But complaining about a cop being authoritarian is like complaining that a doctor giving you a full-body checkup makes you feel uncomfortable, or complaining that a fisherman smells like fish. Oh, is the cop being authoritarian? Well, what a surprise. Who would have thought such a thing possible? Why shouldn't a cop be authoritarian, and why shouldn't a fisherman smell like fish? This does not feel like a good line of argument to me. I think many people can agree that the character of Dirty Harry is cool, but being cool doesn't necessarily make you good at your job. Few people are so fortunate that they are both cool and good at their job. So he is cool and looks good in his grey herringbone tweed jacket, but does he do his job well? Let's consider another figure to compare him with and see what comes to light. What happens if we use Sheriff Ed Bell from No Country for Old Men as a point of comparison? Sheriff Ed Bell is actually not good at his job. He is not good at his job because he is too old and he is not brave. In terms of Aristotle's conception of virtue, where we have a virtue continuum of deficiency, the golden mean, and excess, Sheriff Ed Bell would suffer from a deficiency of bravery. Harry Callahan does not suffer from a deficiency of bravery, although some might argue that he suffers from an excess of bravery, taking him to the point of brashness or recklessness. If this is true, and if this is a consistent quality of his character, then he would, like Sheriff Ed Bell, not be good at his job. Indeed, Harry seems to be continually at loggerheads with his superiors in the police department and beyond, who accuse him of precisely this excess. But even though they are his superiors, they might be wrong. We hear about, but don't see, for example, how Harry shot a man involved in an attempted rape. According to the chief and the mayor, Harry is too trigger-happy. But trigger-happy does not necessarily mean one is breaking the law. This can often be the correct judgment call to make, as opposed to the immediate assumption that de-escalation is always going to work. Since when does de-escalation always work and using force never work? This doesn't seem right either. In fact, in the very following scene, we as viewers get to test this theory. The incident of crime we get to assess is a bank robbery perpetrated by some black criminals. The racial component is no doubt meant to provoke a reaction in the liberally minded viewer, but probably in the less liberally minded viewer as well. Harry goes into a diner and orders a hot dog. But noticing something suspicious outside the bank across the road, he tells the owner of the diner to call it in as a 211, a robbery in progress. Before the call can be made, the sound of the bank alarm and a gunshot is heard. Harry walks outside, gives one of the robbers a warning of halt, fires his weapon only after being fired at, and then proceeds to wound one and kill two of the other criminals. All of this while still chewing on a piece of hot dog. Responding to a high-risk situation with such equanimity while still chewing on a piece of hot dog is surely achieving the Aristotelian golden mean of composure and self-control. Over time, I believe a misconception has developed about why audiences like Harry Callahan. I think this misconception is due to fading and unreliable cultural memory, as well as the title of the film itself. But the nickname of Dirty Harry does not mean he is a dirty or corrupt cop. We find out that this designation is given to him because he is the one who usually bears the brunt of all the bad or dirty assignments. His nickname, therefore, is a testament to a type of sacrificial work ethic. Something we begin to notice about Harry is that he doesn't really have a life outside of his work. His life is his work. His work is his life. Is this a good thing? Some could argue that an overcommitment to one's job can actually make one bad at one's job, or at least not as good as one could be with a reasonable amount of work-life balance. I think we should take this as a serious response to my question. It certainly appears that Harry is not flourishing in the Aristotelian sense as a fully rounded individual. From the outside, his life might appear quite sad. But what if a job is so serious that it requires our almost undivided attention? If there is any job that qualifies, then it stands to reason that the safety and security of a city and its citizens would be that job. Harry is more of a figure from the old world in this regard, a member of a certain caste, with a certain function and role. Curiously, this would place him in Plato's auxiliary class. Perhaps the notion of a well-rounded individual is actually a little bit misguided. Besides, the cultivation of good character would, in the Aristotelian model, find its highest value in the consistency of good action, as opposed to the pageantry of a multifaceted life. Harry appears to lack this type of awareness anyway. When asked why he stays in his job, he replies, "I don't know. I really don't." Once again, some would say this is evidence of an unexamined life. But isn't it a really cool answer? Would it really be better if he had some platitudinous statement ready to go? It does, at the very least, show us that he is not over-examining his life. As we should all know by being a little bit suspicious of Socrates, perhaps the over-examined, or even examined, life is not worth living. Whatever the case, I see this having an effect on Harry in terms of what he might be missing out on personally, rather than having a negative effect on his job per se. Other, finer aspects of his job are accounted for and well presented. He has good instincts. He is interested in outcomes. He is adaptable when the situation calls for it. He is unsentimental. He is mostly a good shot. In my estimation, he misses too many shots during some encounters, and I would consider bad aim as a mark against his job performance in the first film. Let's just chalk that up to Hollywood entertainment purposes. Although it is interesting to note that quite a big deal is made of Harry as a top-tier marksman in the sequel, so John Milius may have felt the same way I did. My question gets more interesting the more the main case of the film, the attempt to track down and apprehend the serial killer Scorpio, unravels. What starts out as a standard investigation quickly presents opportunities for Harry to bend and even defy the rules given to him by his superiors. Once again, for a great number of people, this would be enough to answer my original question in the negative. But let's not be too hasty. What happens when we think about another type of job? A doctor, for example, can refuse to follow the orders of a hospital and still be a good doctor. If this is true, the same can be true of a cop. And although not a job, a whistleblower would be someone in a job who consciously, and often at great personal risk, decides to step outside the rules of the job for moral reasons. These would be classified as instances of extra-legal ethics. The Hippocratic Oath is the ancient oath or pledge taken by doctors, even though it is not strictly tied to the rules or regulations of their particular hospital, clinic, or sometimes nation. It's easy to understand why some doctors would not, in good conscience, be able to follow certain orders given to them. Is the doctor who believes abortion is wrong bad at his or her job for refusing to provide such a service? In such a situation, the doctor can appeal to both personal conscience as well as the Hippocratic Oath itself, which provides enough ethical substance to support the doctor in such a belief. Now, I am by no means an expert in the legal and judicial situation of law enforcement in the state of California during the early 1970s. But I think it's easy enough to grant that a situation can arise where following orders might be wrong. The extra-legal dimension in the pursuit of the Scorpio killer amounts to the following. Number 1. Arresting a suspect without a warrant. Number 2. Excessive use of force. Number 3. Following a suspect outside of police duties. Number 4. Disobeying the order to transport ransom money and intercepting the suspect with deadly force instead. It is during these stages that the film settles into something akin to an urban or city western. For numbers 1 and 2, we as viewers are given good enough reasons to view them as an over-application of the law. In this case, by a police department sliding into a type of anarcho-tyranny, where the rights of suspects and criminals are being over-privileged. I do think number 3 adds real complication to my question, and number 4 is where most people would cry vigilantism. However, it is a type of going rogue that is understandable in the context of the film, because the audience knows beyond a reasonable doubt that not only is Scorpio the killer, but that the attempts to negotiate with him have failed and will continue to fail. It is a credit to the film that it poses number 4 almost as a type of modern-day trolley problem. Do you obey orders with the near certain knowledge that the killer's word will not be kept? Or do you go rogue and contravene your professional duties as a cop? It's tempting to say, given the conditions described, that the consistency of character and the adherence to professional virtue invites us to accept number 4. If this is too much for people to accept, can we perhaps say that it might be at the point Harry becomes a bad cop that he becomes a good man? Now I want to quickly talk about the sequel Magnum Force. Magnum Force was written by the reactionary par excellence John Milius. And we really need to mention this film in relation to the first one. I believe Magnum Force is in deep conversation with the first film. Specifically, it knowingly addresses the accusations of irresponsibility laid against the first film. In Magnum Force, it comes to light that there may be a rogue group of police vigilantes working within the police force, a type of death squad. John Milius had issues with Michael Cimino's final draft of the screenplay, but the film ultimately stands as an endorsement of the first film and a possible affirmative answer to my primary question. In choosing to situate Harry in this type of story, it shows that Harry's conduct as a cop is actually normal and honorable. This is done by shifting the discourse away from just Harry and comparing him to a more extreme example of what we can call true vigilantism. It's as if the film is saying to the audience, let me show you by way of comparison that Dirty Harry is actually a good cop who knows his limitations. And this actually becomes a refrain in the film and something Clint Eastwood says, a man must know his limitations. At one point in the film, Harry even says, in reference to the death squad, it's not too hard to understand how this could happen nowadays, the way things are. I'm not entirely sure how much of this came from Milius himself, but it is a sly and commendable piece of writing nonetheless, and offers some type of answer to my original question when seen in this way.